I'm Lawrence and I'm restoring a Porsche 356 which I bought with my sister. Welcome to my channel where I document her restoration journey. Let's get into the video. I'm well and truly cutting my teeth on this restoration, and right now I'm deep into the engine rebuild. An engine which hasn't run since approximately 1974. This is what it looked like when we started, and now it's in bits all over the garage floor. So far, I've stripped the engine down. This was an absolute mission. Yes! Something's gone, I don't know what. I've cleaned up the crankcase, and most recently I've cleaned up the crankshaft, getting it ready for what I thought was going to be the engine rebuild. It was when I was preparing the crankshaft for the rebuild that I learned my biggest lesson so far. What was the lesson? The best engine is a smooth engine, and a smooth engine is one in balance. If it isn't balanced, the faster an engine spins, the harder it will hammer its own bearings, and if the out of balance is bad enough, it will literally try and tear itself apart. Not ideal. Balancing isn't exactly something you can do at home. Well, at least not in my dad's garage. So in this video, we're going to be heading to Vibration Free in Oxfordshire to get all of Trouble's rotating engine components balanced. Let's go. To balance an engine, use a pretty clever bit of kit, which is why this machine is the difference between an engine that lives and one that quietly destroys itself. It's made up of 5 primary things: a set of rollers, a motor with a belt drive hidden underneath it, transducers which measure displacement, a photocell which measures rotational position, and a clever computer. I'm going to do my best to Janet and John it, as my dad says, and explain how it all works for you. The first thing Aaron does is measure the crankshaft and set the rollers. Trouble's crank is on the smaller side when compared to this big straight 6 crank, waiting to be balanced, but it's not all about size. Once everything is set, the belt drive spins the crank up. This is probably the only time you'll ever see a crankshaft running without an engine around it. Pretty cool. Here's the simple version of what this clever machine's doing. As the crank rotates, any imbalance in the crank will cause it to wobble. This wobble is picked up by the transducers mounted on the roller supports, and they measure how much the crankshaft is wobbling as it spins. Measuring wobble on its own isn't very helpful unless you know where in the rotation it's happening. That's where the photocell comes in. It measures rotational position and tracks where in the rotation the wobble is happening. The transducers and photocells are sending all this displacement and positional data to this very clever computer, which takes all the data and works out exactly how to cancel out the movement. After the first spin, the computer records a maximum displacement of 39 microns at 185 degrees on the left of the crank and 7.8 microns at 294 degrees on the right of the crank. Basically, the nose of the crank, the left-hand side, is really out of balance. But there's another catch. At this point, the machine isn't calibrated, so doesn't yet know how much mass is actually causing the wobble, and as a result, can't work out how much material needs to be removed to cancel the wobble out. To calibrate the machine, Aaron adds a known weight at a known position and spins the crank again. This gives the machine a reference point, and now it can calculate the real numbers. And that's when we get the result. It turns out the crank was pretty out of balance, with a maximum plane imbalance of 202 gram-millimetres. For context, production road cars are typically balanced to a tolerance between 70 and 300 gram-millimetres per plane, and performance engines significantly less. Gram-millimetres can sound complicated, but it's simply a measure of torque caused by the imbalance that needs to be neutralised. To bring the crankshaft into balance, the excess mass needs to be removed. Removing 202 grams seems a lot, but Aaron doesn't need to remove the full weight the machine specifies. Balance is a product of weight and distance. You can remove a loss of weight close to the centre of rotation, or a tiny amount of weight further out. Like a seesaw, a 200 gram weight 1 millimetres away from the centre creates the same effect as a 2 gram weight 100 millimetres away from the centre. As long as the weight Aaron removes multiplied by the distance from the centre of rotation equals the requested gram-millimetres, the imbalance will be corrected. After carefully removing material and retesting a few times, the numbers drop. We end up with a maximum plane unbalance of 12.7 gram millimeters. That is smashing production spec, and even better than most performance engine targets of 35 to 50 gram millimeters. We're now mixing it with Formula 1 engines.
And we were aiming for 20.
We're aiming for about 20.
And you're saying the Formula 1 stuff's around 16 or
They
15?
tend to go for around 16 gram millimeters, so that's as tight a tolerance as you're ever going to need on that.
Nice.
Shaft is an understatement, but if the crank was that far out at the start, I was suddenly very curious what the flywheel was going to look like. And this is where things get interesting. Each part of the rotating assembly is balanced individually on purpose. That way, all the components are balanced in their own right, and if I ever have to replace one of the components in the future, I don't have to replace everything, just the replacement part. It's extra work now, but it saves a lot of pain later. Compared to the crankshaft, the flywheel is much more simple to balance, but more simple doesn't mean perfect. Once the flywheel is assembled onto the crank, we spin up the ever-growing assembly, and straight away we can see it's out of balance. But again, just like before, the machine needed calibrating. So with a balancing starting point noted, Aaron adds a known imbalance by adding a known weight at a known distance from the centre of rotation, and took another measurement to see how the original imbalance changed.
Now with that weight on at 6.2 grams, we've jumped up to 145 microns.
Now the numbers of the original reading mean something, telling him how much mass needed to be removed and at what angle. Aaron used this clever little angle finder to find the right position, mark the spot, and then centre pop the location to make sure the drill didn't wander. The flywheel started out with an imbalanced torque of 220 gram millimeters, causing a wobble of 33 microns. After a few iterations of drilling, retesting, and then drilling, Aaron brings the flywheel balance torque down to just 11 gram millimeters with a wobble of 1.6 microns. An awesome result, but another shocking starting point. The flywheel was actually worse than the crank when we started, which made me even more nervous about what the clutch pressure plate was going to show. There was only one way to find out. The next piece to be added to the rotating assembly was the clutch pressure plate, and this is where things could have gone very wrong. Normally, a clutch pressure plate is doweled to the flywheel so it can only ever go on in one position. That way, once it's balanced, it stays balanced. Trouble's clutch pressure plate wasn't doweled.
Should be a standard dowel, so we'll see if we've got something that fits.
Or if it was, the dowel had gone missing at some point, which means it could be bolted on in a different position every time. If Aaron had balanced it like that and I'd refitted it, slightly rotated later on, we'd undo all this work without ever knowing. So before even touching the balancing machine, Aaron machined 2 new dowel pins.
It's a little loose.
So maybe that's what they used originally and it all fell out.
It's something like 5.5. There you go. That's a nice tight fit in there. A bit of Loctite. That will stay nicely in there.
And do you shorten them?
We'll shorten them to the length they need to be.
Right.
With them installed, now the pressure plate can only ever go on one way. Crisis quietly avoided. With everything pinned and assembled, Aaron spins it up to see what we're starting with. And straight away...
Oh, that's quite remarkable. We've got only 4 microns to start with. Typically, we see much more than that. But,
Okay.
4 microns is basically nothing, which implies there's very little imbalance at all. After a bit of fine tuning, it ends up with an imbalance of just 13 gram millimeters, well inside Aaron's 20 gram millimeter target.
And we're now at
Now at 13 gram millimetres.
13 gram millimetres, and what was the displacement? That was tiny, wasn't it?
It's minuscule, it's 1.3
0.3
microns.
microns.
At this point, the big parts were behaving far better than expected, but it was time to move on to the smaller components. Next up, it was time to balance the front pulley, the final part of the rotating assembly to be balanced. By now, the process is pretty familiar. Pulley on, spin it up, calibrate, and see what the machine says. You can see from all the drill marks on the pulley that this has been balanced before, so in theory, it should be good to go. Sadly, it wasn't good to go. After a calibration run, the initial test showed an imbalance of 90 gram millimetres, and interestingly, all this mass needed to come off directly opposite the original drill marks, which suggests whoever balanced it last time may have gone a little too far. After a few careful passes with the drill, the pulley is brought back into balance. With the rotating assembly finally balanced, it was time to move on to the connecting rods. This is a completely different kind of balancing. Instead of weight being evenly distributed around the rotating axis, with the connecting rods the goal is simple. You want the connecting rods to all have the same weight and the same weight distribution. This is actually something you can do at home, and we did try. All you need is a low friction cradle, some scales, and a lot of patience. The problem with our setup was repeatability. Every time we lifted the rod and put it back down, the numbers changed. At that point, we realised we were basically guessing, so we put the rods and pistons in with vibration free. Aaron's setup wasn't wildly different to ours, just with much better bearings and scales that definitely didn't come from Amazon. The first job was to measure the weight of the rods as a whole. They all measured 521.1 grams, except one, which was 0.4 of a gram lighter, but still well within normal production tolerances. Most production rods are balanced within a 2 gram window from the lightest to the heaviest rod, so on paper, everything was looking fine. The next job was to measure the relative weight displacement, and this is where things got interesting. When you measure the rods end to end, you support the big end and weigh just the little end. The first couple look fine. Then rod number 3 goes on the scales and absolutely sinks them. It takes some adjustment to get the scales to balance, and when we do, it's over 4 grams heavier than the lightest rod. This would have been causing some impressive piston slap. Not catastrophic, but definitely not smooth, and might explain some of the wear in my cylinders. The con rods might have been originally balanced as a whole, but they definitely weren't balanced end to end.
So we've got 4.5 grams of imbalance between the little ends.
Aaron starts balancing them end to end by removing material from the little ends to bring them all into line.
Well, number 2 wants nothing off, it's number 3 next.
Quite a lot. Just chop the little end off.
After quite a lot of grinding later, especially on con rod number 3, all the little ends had finally been brought back into check. The only problem now is that the total weights of the connecting rods were all over the place. The big ends now needed correcting too. After a quick reweigh, Aaron finds the lightest rod and brings the other 3 rods down to the same weight. This is the clever part. If you look carefully where Aaron's grinding, he removes material from the big end, but does it exactly in line with where the rod was supported on the cradle. That way, the total weight changes, but the balance doesn't. By the end, every rod weighed the same, and more importantly, had the same weight distribution.
Whee!
With the connecting rods finally all matching, the last part of the engine to balance was the pistons. These are balanced as a piston and gudgeon pin pair, and unlike rods, balanced based on total weight alone. For a performance street engine build, pistons are usually balanced within plus or minus 1 gram, and standard road cars are generally balanced to within 2 to 10 grams. Incredibly, Aaron managed to find a piston and gudgeon pin pairing combination, which meant that all the pairs weighed exactly the same, except one pair which was 0.1 of a gram out. Considering the scales themselves are only accurate to plus or minus 0.1 grams, and we had already blown the performance tolerance out the window, we decided to leave them exactly as they were.
So that is everything done.
And with that, every moving part inside the engine was finally balanced. I say finally because it took what felt like forever to get to this point. To give you an idea of how long it took, I met Mark in March, and this was filmed towards the end of May. But now at last, I can finally assemble my crankshaft for the final time, hopefully, and get it assembled into the crankcase. If you don't want to miss this video, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching.